In this video, we are going to introduce another layer to the Enneagram. So, at this point, if you've heard about the Enneagram, you probably have some idea of the 9 types, that it's made up of 9 types. There is another layer, another dimension that can also be incredibly useful and provide really helpful real world insights called instinctual bias. And in this video, we're introducing those 3 instinctual bias and looking at specifically how to start using them from a zoomed out lens when we're looking at the different departments within our organization and then our organization as a whole. In future episodes, if this is a topic of interest to you, we are going to be zooming in and then looking at what it means to be a teammate with each of these 3 additional dimensions. And you'll want to keep an eye out for those or check those out in other places here on the Enneagram MBA channel. I am your host over here, CEO and founder of Enneagram MBA, where we do all things Enneagram for teams, from a team of 6 to a team of 60 to a team of 160. So if this is a topic of interest to you, or you're looking to bring together your own team for some additional personal awareness and others awareness training, I'm going to invite you to check out our options over at enneagrammba.com. And without further ado, let's get to this video. And of course, this comes down to, team specific, organization specific issues. But today we're going to introduce a concept called the instinctual biases. And this is going to help us start to gain some insight about our own approach, maybe a default mode that we're running on and don't even realize it. And therefore, realizing, oh, not everybody is operating under this default mode, and then start to get curious, how might they be viewing this? What might they be valuing in this particular situation? And while our individually, we can absolutely have these, and we will be talking more about these on an individual level more on this channel. We're today going to kind of zoom out a level or two and start to look at what might the instinctual bias of our department be, and then what might the instinctual bias of our organization or our industry be, and then how do all of those kind of, what's the dynamic between all these? Are they all the same? Are they all 3 different? Do we have 2 that are the same? What does that mean? What are the strengths from that dynamic? Where might the potential friction points be with that dynamic? And so, to help us give us some actionable takeaways, we're also going to be referring to 4 questions from an article that came from the Harvard Business Review around how to resolve cross-department rivalries or conflict. And so we're going to be using a couple questions from this article, and then the Enneagram to give us the language. I think whether we're talking about the Enneagram, the Colby, Myers-Briggs, whatever it might be, it's giving us a mirror to hold up to ourselves and see, oh, this is what I'm looking at. And then this is how someone else might be looking at this. So if you're familiar with the Enneagram, you will have heard some concept around instinctual variants, subtypes, and the way that traditionally the Enneagram is taught. There are specific terms that you will have heard. We use here at Enneagram MBA the awareness to action Enneagram methodology. And one of the biggest differences is how they talk about the instinctual biases. And there are 3, and these 3 flavors, it's kind of a layer deeper below the type, can really give you some additional um, insight and awareness about yourself. And there's only three of them. So even if you don't know somebody's type, this can just remembering three. And these are things that you can typically see someone doing. And we're going to talk about what those three things are. The analogy that the CEO of Awareness to Action will use to kind of talk about types and instinctual biases is that you can use this example of height and weight. So a lot of times when we're just talking about height or when we're just talking about type, you know the height of somebody, for example. So you might know, okay, somebody is 6 foot tall. All right, that's helpful information. It's not a complete picture. You don't know everything, but it's a start. And then when you add in this second layer called instinctual biases, you get the weight of somebody. So somebody who weighs, 150 pounds and is 6 foot tall, they look very different than somebody who might weigh 250 pounds and be 6 foot tall. And so it just gives you some additional insight, a better picture. Now, is height and weight the complete picture? Absolutely not. Same thing here, right? We are very complex human beings, but it adds in another dimension, another layer for deeper understanding of ourselves and others. So first thing I wanted to share with you is that this article said that 85% of workers experience some regular form of conflict. And here in the US, it ends up being about 3 hours a week of dealing with, navigating, talking about the conflict that you have in the workplace, which it ends up being a lot. And it equates to 359 billion paid hours riddled in conflict. So it does matter. It is a part of life. Yes, you will always have conflict. It will be hard to completely avoid it, but I think you can have less of it. And I believe that you can navigate it more productively. There's a lot of ways to do that, understanding your personality, your preferences, maybe how you might be helping or hurting particular relationships can be really insightful. But like I said, today we're going to zoom out a bit and understand just get some language for the different departments that we are working in and even the different industries using this part of the Enneagram called instinctual biases. So there's three of these instinctual biases. The first one is called preserving. And if you are familiar with the concept of subtypes, instinctual variants, and traditional Enneagram teachings, this you'll be familiar with this. This is known as self-preservation under those teachings, but the preserving instinctual bias is really focused on nurturing nesting. And so we'll talk more in future videos and get more into the nitty-gritty of this subtype, but those that really resonate with this will kind of be operating on default in a couple of key categories. There's three subcategories to this one, and it has to do with let's see here on my notes. The three have to do with security, with well-being and resources, and with maintenance. So under security, we have topics like safety, we have relationships that people will find security in, and risk avoidance. Okay, that's I think particularly important when we're zooming out, looking at departments, organizations, industries. The second subcategory is well-being and resources. So this has to do with comfort. Do I have the best mattress so that I can be comfortable and sleep and take good care of my sleep hygiene? Supply. Do I have enough resources? And health. These might be the people who are, checking their Apple Watch stats. Maybe they have a sleep tracker. They're checking their blood pressure, their heart rate, taking their vitamins, making sure, all their blood levels are all in line. We have the third subcategory, which has to do with maintenance. And this is tending to the nest, tending to the house, tending to the space that you occupy often. Repair. Do you have, extra batteries? Do you have the tools you need to repair, replenish when needed? And then the last one, it has to do with traditions. So traditions are incredibly important to those in this category. We did this last year. We're going to do it again. We did this 10 years ago. We're going to keep doing it. It's tradition that we do, the holidays this way, that we run the meetings this way, that we host the event this way. Traditions are very important to people. And so you can see people who like something new and want to try, keep going bigger, where there could be some conflict with that one. So I think of the preserving energy with just departments in an organization like accounting, finance, legal, maybe if you have a compliance department, health and safety compliance, environmental compliance. HR could be in here. I think it depends on which role maybe HR is in, but making sure you're in compliance with the laws of HR could absolutely fall under this category. And then, industry wise, organization wise, these are probably your more traditional organizations, your banks, the insurance, law firms, dentists, your doctor, conservation agencies, in the government world. And so thinking about, okay, what department am I in? What department am I having conflict in? What type of industry am I in? And then what do I relate, or what do I most resonate with, can shine some light on some of those friction points. So you may or may not identify with this. We're going to keep going to the second one, but that is the overview of the preserving. The next one we're going to talk about is the transmitting bias. This is the one that is focused on attracting, bonding. If you are familiar with the Enneagram subtypes already, this is going to be the one known as sexual or one-to-one. Although as we will together on this channel start talking more about the awareness to action approach, it's not an exact, one for one. It's not necessarily just a term that we're replacing. There are some differences in the meaning that I think make it much more clear and make it much more actionable as to what instinctual bias you are and what to do with it, where to grow, where to put your focus on, where your opportunities for developments might be, where your strengths are. And I think a lot of times people will actually mistype for this one because of the term one-to-one. And, we'll say sexual. I can't really say that in the workplace. And so the term one-to-one has replaced it. I don't know that that is entirely accurate, especially when we just went back, when we go back and look at the preserving subcategory where that relationship is under one of those, and people will find a lot of security in those relationships. So it's, am I transmitting or am I preserving, depending on why you value that one-to-one dynamic. So our transmitting also has 3 subcategories. We have asserting, we have broadcasting and narrowcasting, and we have impressing. So a couple of values, couple of priorities, things to focus on underneath that asserting subcategory is ambition, low inhibition. So almost the opposite to the preserving, where it's, they had a low risk tolerance and very, risk management. This one, not really even on the radar a lot of times, not even thinking about it. Kind of jump in the net, leap in the net will appear kind of energy here. And then a need for satisfaction. Broadcasting and narrowcasting subcategory has to do with some of that one-to-one energy. And this type is called transmitting because, and it is I believe, so much more accurate because these are the people that walk into a room, kind of transmit. They put their signal out. They're like a beacon of light. They are dressed to be noticed. They are speaking to be noticed. Their tone, their topics of conversation, they're turning on the charm. They might have this big magnetic energy. And so when they walk into a room, when they step into a conversation or a meeting, they want to be noticed. And then when they find someone that they think might be interesting to talk to, or that someone might find them interesting, they're going to narrowcast. They're going to put all their attention, probably make that person feel like the most important person in the entire room. And then when they're done, they're going to go back, widen their scope, and go back to broadcasting. So it's this ebb and flow of narrowcasting and broadcasting with our transmitters. They also have seduction under here and signaling. So signaling, hey, what I have to say is important. They might signal with their mannerisms, with their tone of voice, with what they are wearing. And then the last subcategory here is impressing. And so this has to do with charm. This has to do with impact, wanting to make an impact. And then this has to do with legacy. I want to leave a legacy. We've talked before on the Enneagram at Work podcast, and I think over here as well around Steve Jobs and what type he might have been. And most likely he was an Enneagram type 4, but with this transmitting subtype energy. So, one of his most famous quotes is, I want to leave a dent in the universe. So leaving a legacy, leaving something behind is incredibly important for our transmitters here. Some transmitting departments in your organization. The first one that always comes to mind for me is that the sales departments, maybe your promotions and branding department. I went back and forth with PR. Could it be this one, or could it be the next group that we talk about? I'd love to hear any comments or thoughts you have on that. And then industry wise, this might be a company like Tesla, it might be the Blue Origin or the SpaceX companies. This might be your professional sport industries where, professional sport team. This might also be your startup. I think of real estate a lot, being an industry in general. Nike, I put as a company that probably has some of that transmitting energy. And then I also had Equinox on here because a lot of times we'll talk, health clubs might be just automatically put under the preserving category because of the things that we talked about, that attention to health and wellness, well-being. But Equinox comes across as, a type of club that isn't just about that. They want to be noticed. They want to be different. They're kind of, they want to make a big impact, be noticed in the industry. Let's see. Oh, I also had business development as another department in your organization that might have some of this transmitting energy. And then last but not least is the navigating energy, where they are looking to kind of dial into the group. They have a heightened awareness of group dynamics, social dynamics. And so their 3 subcategories have to do with, let's see here. What do I want to say first? With trust and reciprocity, with power and influence dynamics, and then with status and identity. And under the trust and reciprocity, again, we'll get into more of these. So if you come back to the channel, and as I do them, I'll link them below here. I'll update the comments here. But this subcategory has to do with trade, group coherence, information exchange. And this might be your gossip. So, we got office gossip, which tends to be something, it's like, oh, don't gossip. But for these people, they really value that gossip because it's a way to exchange information. It's okay. If I know about this person, then I know how to show up with this person. If I know what's going on with this team, then I know to maybe avoid that team, or I can connect that team with this team. Maybe I can help. Maybe I know how to more productively have this meeting because I know this gossip going on or whatever it might be. And again, these things just happen. They're just kind of the default mode of what you value, what you prioritize. And we'll kind of talk at the end how it overlaps, how it works with your Enneagram type. But those are some things under that trust and reciprocity. We also have power and influence dynamics. So this is politics. This is social intelligence. This is hierarchy management. So you may not necessarily want to be in charge as a navigator, but you want to know who is in charge and understanding kind of what the chain of command is. And then the last one is status and identity. And this one includes what's the pecking order, what role clarity, what does this person actually do? What are they actually responsible for? And then reputation management. And so these people will have a tendency to maybe not share a lot about themselves because while they want to be accepted as part of the group, they also don't want to say too much and risk being rejected. So they're going to be really careful about managing their image, managing their reputation. So they may not share a lot. And as I'm going through these, you might be thinking of some specific types. And when I talk about this one, I think about type 3 a lot. And so it's interesting to think, wow, when you have a social 3 or a transmitting 3 even, that is kind of the textbook 3. But what happens when you pair almost that opposite energy of the preserving energy with a 3? You get somebody who looks completely different, but still is very much striving to feel successful. It's just what they value, what they're striving for, what they determine as successful, is very different. So they will look very different. I use the example of an 8 a lot when we talked about transmitting. Textbook type 8 comes up for me, and I see a lot of 8 characteristics in that instinctual bias. So you have a transmitting 8, they are the textbook 8. But what happens when you pair the preserving energy with that type 8 energy? You're going to get a very different looking type 8. Going to be striving to feel powerful is going to be important to them, but what makes them feel powerful will be very different, and that will impact how they express their behavior. I think of type 6 sometimes as the preserving. So it's like the ultimate type 6 when you have a preserving 6. What does it look like though when you have that preserving risk avoidance energy, but then you're also bringing this transmitting, leave a legacy kind of energy? What does that 6 look like? Probably very different than the preserving 6. So it's really interesting and helpful to understand both the type and the person's instinctual bias to get a more complete picture and to better understand and navigate your working relationships with them. With the navigating departments in an organization, I had the marketing department. I had the public affairs department, maybe HR, again, kind of depending on what part of HR, because I also think there are significant roles and parts of HR that very much have to be attuned to social dynamics, be very much dialed into office politics, understand hierarchy management and role clarity. So I had them on there as well. I also had an editorial team, might be on the navigating side, because social intelligence is going to be important, kind of reputation management, reputation for the publication, positioning themselves in a way that looks reputable. And so I actually had a couple of matchups in my real world experience, and then some real world examples that I've seen from other teams about how this conflict can happen. And one of those is when I worked for a publication. We had our editorial team, and then we had our sales team. So editorial team maybe being more on that, navigating instinctual bias, focused on those things. And then our sales team very much focused on, hitting the goals, and then, looking, getting our numbers, leaving, the legacy when it comes to, highest achieving goals and making those numbers. And there's gonna be um, some friction just based on those roles, but we can use this Enneagram insight to also help us understand what they might be focused on and why there might be some conflict, and to better understand where somebody might be coming from. I also had compliance and business development. I used to work for a construction material company, and when we went to look at new properties that the business development team wanted to acquire, safety and sometimes environmental compliance would come in and say, this is not going to be a good deal. We have all these problems. We have all this risk we'd have to take on. It's going to cost this much." And it would be, really annoying to the business development team who wanted to just push forward. We'll figure it out along the way. We'll make it work somehow. Leap and the net will appear energy again there. So you can see why there'd be conflict. Obviously, there's always going to be the friction, and it's going to be very organization and team specific. But using this part of the Enneagram, we can start to gain some insight into what that default is for us. What default might someone else be operating under? And then give us some specific language for talking about it. Another one here that I had was, maybe a legal team for a sports team, and then they have, coming into some friction points with their promotions or promotion and sales team, where they're promising, advertisers and clients, "Oh yeah, we can say this, we can do this, we can put your logo on this." And the legal team saying, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, wait a minute here. We can't do that legally. Or if we do this for one person, we're going to legally have to do it for everybody moving forward, and we can't afford that, or that doesn't make sense." And so there's that friction. And when you think about, okay, where is the legal team coming from here? Where's the sales and promotions team coming from here? You start to have a little bit more understanding. Again, we'll never fully avoid that conflict, but start to navigate through it, hopefully more productively. Now, I mentioned this article. I don't know about permanently resolving rivalries among departments, but I think to start to gain some better understanding. And the author shares 4 questions to start to get together, maybe with the team leaders from the different departments who are butting heads, or bring both departments together and have a conversation among each other. One of those questions is, what value do we create together? Yes, one team might be good at another, one department's going to be good at something else, but what do we create when we actually come together with those capabilities, skills, and talents? What can we create together? Not just how can this team be successful, how can this team be successful, but what happens when we come together? What value do we provide for the organization? And this would be a really interesting conversation. I'm not in your industry, your company, so there's going to be some things that only you will be able to think about. And maybe when you bring the teams together, they come up with some things that you didn't even think of. Maybe it's getting a product to market faster. Maybe it's whatever. I'm just throwing some examples out there. The second question to ask is, what capabilities do we need? What do we need? I think is a better way to say this, from the organization or from the leadership to deliver this value. So once we've identified what is our value together, what do we need from the organization? Is it more frequent communication? Is it more accurate communication? Is it a monthly meeting that we need to have as an organization, so that all the departments are coming together and we're all on the same page? Whatever that is, what are the things that you need from your leadership, from the organization, to provide that collaborative value? The third question is, how will we resolve conflicts and make decisions while maintaining trust? So, you know, empathy is going to be really important here. And I think that when we have tools like the Enneagram, when we have concepts like these instinctual bias, we can start to have that empathy. We may not agree, but we can start to maybe understand where they're coming from and have that empathy. And so this is around understanding, hey, what are our most common friction points, whether it's a time of year, trigger events, what are those? And then knowing what we know about each other, knowing what we know about the value that we bring, how can we better and more productively move through those times? We shouldn't expect not to have conflict, but how can we do it in a more productive, healthy way? And when this happens too, start to other departments may start to say, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea that you all had to do that. No wonder why it's so frustrating when we ask for this." Right? And that's where that empathy comes from. Um, and then lastly, what do we need from each other to succeed? So we've talked about what do we need from our leadership, the organization to be successful, to be able to deliver that value. Now, what do we need from each other? Is it a piece of technology, a shared calendar? Is it inviting a few teammates from each of the departments to regular meetings so that they're in the loop, so that they have an opportunity to provide feedback? What are those needs? So those are the questions, and I will put those below too in case you want to revisit that. But my hope is that by starting to introduce this concept of instinctual biases here on our Enneagram MBA channel, we both start to think about ourselves and others and look at, how do we apply this? How do we use this? I'm always saying, it's not about making our team's Enneagram experts, but rather experts in themselves, experts in their work relationships. And so when we can, find a concept in the Enneagram that gives us some language, that gives us some interesting insights, and then look at some specific situations for how we can use it, it I think increases the opportunity for it to be something that becomes not just information, but implementation. How can we now take action on this knowledge and not just be something fun or interesting that we know now, but how can we actually use it?